keep people from going to jail. Keep them out of the cage, and if you're in the cage, get them out of the cage as quickly as possible because jail's no place to be. It's a very dangerous place. People die there every day.
Sure.
So,
I mean, people get Sandra Blanded, you know.
or Michael Sabid or Freddie Gray or this
Yeah.
young man who just died the other day in Georgia. That's reality.
Yeah, and when I get really frustrated when all these horrible things happen when people go behind the thin blue line, when they go behind that blue wall of silence and they get murdered. Um, Here's the thing: even if a bona fide murder investigation opens up, it's still swept under the rug by the corporate media. I'll give case in point. I went down to Texas and interviewed the sheriff who was in charge of the jail Sandra Bland was murdered in.
Right.
She was murdered, and they claimed she hung herself with one of those translucent jail garbage bags over what is it, a 5-foot wall over the corner of it. Now, one of the things I did when I went down there and did my own little 2 cents worth of investigation is I went in their dumpster and I got their trash bags out that they used, in their dumpsters. And we're not talking those big green hefty duty bags. We're talking a thin translucent bag that rips easily. And when I got to look at this bag in the dumpster, I'm all, this woman was murdered. When I went through all their trash, like there was no big thick bags at all. It's all these little thin, very easily teared paper bags. I'm like, that's not going to hold anyone's weight. And there's no way that this is long enough to fit around the top of a wall, yet virtually no one in the corporate media or no one in mainstream consciousness even knows that Sandra Bland was murdered, and it's just crazy to me that someone could get murdered. That was, I mean, it's not crazy to me that someone could get murdered and it could get covered up. It's crazy to me that,
let me bring you with a news flash there, brother.
Right, go ahead.
The thing is, the majority of people in society automatically assume if you're in jail or in prison, you got to be guilty. And fuck, who cares about guilty people?
Absolutely. But the point I was making was I think it's amazing the level of control that the corporate narrative has on people's minds. And check this out, Felipe. Okay, Sandra Bland was dinner conversation at everybody's table for, at least a month in the corporate narrative, in the news cycle. Now, because of her death. But once it became a murder investigation, something that's been made such high profile just gets disappeared because corporate media stopped reporting on it. And I think that's case in point, a testament to why people like Bunny Boots, why people like Felipe Hemming, why all these activists that you represent, and not just photography and videography advocates or First Amendment advocates, but all these other type of activists that you help. That's precisely why people like us exist, is because the corporate narrative is so powerful, and we need to wrestle that back from them.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But what was the next thing in the news cycle? You got to understand, we were dealing with people that have a attention span of a gnat, and that's a compliment to a gnat. That that they're not looking for the basis of the facts of the matter. They're just simply looking for the sizzle. And these corporate newsrooms, these are companies. They tend not to want to focus the money on these cases for whatever reason. And they rely upon the local media to do their jobs. But in this case here in Texas, as well as I do, that local media is in bed with the cops. And they're not going to be in a situation where they're ever going to talk bad about them. They're just not. Just like the female journalist that I was interviewed by regarding Bunny Boots' arrest, and you saw where that went. And turns out that she's really good friends with the cops. So
sure.
That's what's going to happen.
I'd like to touch on my understanding, and I'd like to get feedback from you because you've done so much liaising between activists that are in trouble and public information officers and corporate media, frankly, is that here is the mechanism that will always slant corporate narrative in the favor of the police. If it bleeds, it leads. And there's an economic incentivization that's placed upon anyone who can do their job well in corporate media that's placed upon them for access to the stories that leads a narrative, to the stories that make it into the limelight, to the stories that are worth a lot of market share of advertising. Those are those stories that only a public information officer or someone in the know in law enforcement will be able to give them access to. And sometimes if minutes go by, less than half an hour goes by before corporate news can report a story, they're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they need to maintain that very, very cozy relationship with the public information officers of the municipality that they work in. And that's one of the ways that the thin blue line of censorship will always slant the corporate narrative. And I just wanted to know your thoughts on that.
You got to understand where these people are coming from. These it's like these police officers that don't whistleblow is because you're looking at that paycheck, and and it's difficult if you've not been out in the job seeking world. You got to understand that these people don't want to have to go looking for another job. They just don't, and they want to have the reliability of that paycheck every 2 weeks or every week or every month, no matter what it is. So it's not that I'm gonna not sympathize with their decision making. I actually hate them for the decision making, but I understand it, and I don't. That's really what that is. Now, as far as the mainstream corporate media, these people are out doing dirt too. Next thing you know, ask anyone who's reported on the police what happens. I don't have to tell you. You can ask friends you were saying. Ask Chris Ponte.
Sure.
You gain the ire of local law enforcement. I just did an investigation regarding a pitches motion, which is a motion we file here in California to gain information on bad police officers. Because here in California, we don't have Brady in place because we have the Peace Officers Bill of Rights, and as a result of that, an attorney has to file, no matter if it's a civil or a criminal matter, has to file a pitches motion so we can get access to their complaint history. So we looked into Deputy Ryan Walker, who was the deputy who arrested Poetic and falsely charged him with 402, which is the looky-loo law, and later Deputy Stephanie Barragon decided to tie on another charge of 148, which is just silly.
That's a really. Oh, you finish your sentence. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No.
Okay. You mentioned the Fraternal Order of Police's, the Grand Lodge of the Fraternal Order of Police's Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, and I think that's important for the education of the people listening to this. Is people think that when cops get investigated, that they're treated with the same standard of law and they're held to the same kind of standards that regular citizens are. And contrary to popular misconception, that's just not true. They have all these special rights that were granted to them. The first one was right there in California in 1972. They perverted 2 Supreme Court decisions to amalgamize them into the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. And what you said was absolutely true. It says in one of their special rights that they can't be ridiculed for enjoying any of their rights, and that's why you have to file that paperwork that they don't have Brady, like you were saying.
Right, but in other states like Florida, and I've shared this story before on my live stream from 7 days a week on my YouTube channel. But we have stories out of Florida where we've been able. There's an example of this detective in Plantation, Florida, which is a adjoining community to Fort Lauderdale in Broward County, that he sent a picture of himself self-pleasuring himself on a phone and sent it over to a person that was a victim of a crime, and as a result of that, he had some issues, and so we were able to gain the whole file to include the video file of him, running a batch. And so, but here in California, you would never get that. You can't. We even were able to get a hold of police officers' job applications to see who signed off on as their references. And I mean, really and truly, these are. Right. I have no issue with that. I mean, these are public employees, and they should. Just like last night, on my live stream, I inadvertently shared a document that I thought was a redacted version, and it wasn't. I made a mistake. Later on, I came back and I edited the issue, and all of a sudden, I'm catching all kinds of grief. Oh, you intentionally doxed someone, and I know Bunny Boots will tell you straight away. If Felipe intentionally does something, it's not going to be something minor. It's going to be something major. I don't do light-handed anything. I do heavy-handed everything.
Yeah, that's something you and I have in common. I'm not exactly subtle.
No, exactly.
That is true. If he's gonna hit something, he's gonna hit it hard.
Yep. And so And so that's the thing going on now with these new what we call new jacks. These are new people that have benefited from the road laid to them before by others, and now they're really shitting on them. They're shitting on them with and it's not that anybody owes anybody any sort of allegiance or respect or even courtesy, because me and you are both anarchists, and we both understand that, hey, just as long as you're not violent to NAP, everything should be just fine. And so everybody's entitled to their opinions, but when these opinions become hateful or harmful and stuff like that, and so when I made this error, I immediately brought the video down. I edited the video as I did, and then contacted the person that I wronged and said, hey, man, you're going to get some phone calls of people saying I did something to you.
Well, that's anarchism in the nutshell, is not needing some regulatory body over you. And if you wrong someone, you take it upon yourself. It's incumbent upon you to make it right. And then, we need less tyranny, basically. We need less overlords because you're taking responsibility for your own actions. But I'd have to disagree with you for a moment, Felipe.
Go ahead.
I think that people like Jacob Crawford, for instance, people like, older dogs that have been into this, the trailblazers, these people deserve, a certain amount of respect, and people that have been into it for a number of years. Like,
I guarantee you, Mike, I guarantee you this: the majority of the people wouldn't even know who Jacob is. You know that? Honestly, you ask them. I'll do that tonight on my live stream. Okay. I know who he is. He's a friend of mine, and I interact with him on a regular basis, just like he's a friend of yours. And he's and so we know who these people are. We also know who Jeff Gray is, and it's not just Jeff Gray, the guy on the video. We know him.
Yeah, I mean, I've had conversations with Jacob, but he's not like a bud, but we've talked, and he's a good guy, and I know his work. Anybody who can do that back then in Oakland, mad respect. But what I'm saying is the Trailblazers, sure, these young kids that are and young people that are getting into cop watching, or they're getting into the liberty movement or the auditors or whatever, there's a certain amount of respect I give people because of sweat equity. Right. When you've been in this game this long, and you've been arrested, you've been attacked by police, you've been beaten, I'm not trying to say, my life is way worse than everyone else's, but I've been attacked by police,
Right. I know.
So, these people do deserve some sort of respect, and just because of the sweat equity that they put into it, but I think it's kind of disrespectful for people that are just into it to start infighting because of their own cult of personality.
It's weird. It's just really weird. I've never, and Bunny Boots can testify to this, that we've never seen this type of shit before. I mean, this is all fresh within the last 6 months. We had reasons to exile somebody, and for obvious reasons, and you were entitled to hang out with whoever you like. You were able to do that, but there was just some things that we just weren't willing to cover. And he had to understand that. And, much like when we talk about News Now Houston, believe me, we caught flack for covering his contact. Believe me, and still do today. I still get the emails inbox from Photography's Not a Crime. I still do. And I could show it to you. Hey, do you know this guy's this? Well, yeah. But what about this other guy? It's like, there's a huge difference. There's a huge difference.
I got a really good example with Robert West.
What about him?
I caught when I did the filming, I put out the First Amendment Friday last week. I got huge amounts of flack